Well, I think the toughest thing about studying antibiotic alternatives is that they are an alternative to antibiotics, and you're not going to see the same effect. If I have an animal that's sick with a bacteria and I pair it with the right, antibiotic, overnight that animal is going to get better. And I think antibiotic alternatives are a lot more, you know, minor of a change or adjustment, if you will, and that makes it really hard to measure in the laboratory when you're looking at small changes like that, and you have to have very big sample sizes, and of course that gets really costly. And if you start to look at things like immune response or salmonella and that type of thing, and you have a lot of variability between the animals, these aren't mice that are inbred. These chickens are relatively outbred, so it's really, really, really difficult to see these differences sometimes.
Hi, welcome to the Poultry Podcast Show. I'm Karen Grogan. I'll be your host today. And today we're going to be chatting with Dr. Morgan Farnell at Texas A&M University. Welcome to the show, Morgan.
Thank you for having me.
So Morgan, what do you do at Texas A&M, and sort of what department you're in and what background got you to the point where you are now?
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. I'm a associate professor in the poultry science department at Texas A&M. My training's in pre-harvest food safety and avian immunology. I worked for the extension service for A&M and Mississippi State for about 11 years, and I've been back at Texas A&M for 7 years now with a primary research appointment. However, in March, I'm serving. I was promoted as the associate department head of extension, so I'm now returning to extension in a manner of speaking, which is fun because I'm a farm kid,
Right.
So I've always enjoyed working with the industry. Really looking forward to that opportunity. During my extension time, I did a lot of work with reportable disease response. How do you humanely kill a lot of animals quickly?
Right.
How do you clean and disinfect the surfaces afterwards? And in support of my extension program, I did a lot of 5-gallon bucket research, I guess, some trying to answer questions the industry may have. And so did quite a bit of that. And then when I came back to A&M, I kind of tried to revisit my training, I guess, and I've spent a lot of time looking at antibiotic alternatives and trying to understand their mechanism of action by looking at the immune response to these substances. And I've done a little bit of work with antimicrobial resistance lately. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Then you're very busy. And then if you're adding extension duties on top of that research appointment, that's a lot.
Oh yeah, I'm a triple threat. So
Right.
teaching, research, and extension. So it's good. Makes it fun.
One of AB Vista's core strategies is to give customers the flexibility to do more with less, which is a common theme among many companies and producers in today's industry. As a science-driven company, AB Vista has proven results to help our customers achieve optimal performance using customized programs with our core phytase and xylanase.
Excellent. Well, so in terms of so your PhD is in immunology.
Well, veterinary microbiology, focused in avian immunology, and
Okay.
the master's is in poultry science.
Excellent.
So, yeah, actually, I'm a mule rider. There aren't a lot of us around. It's a great school in South Arkansas, and I got my bachelor's in ag business there.
Okay.
And went to work for Tyson Foods as a debone supervisor. And yeah, actually came to A&M to get my master's in poultry science with the thought of moving up in the industry a little more quickly with the master's. And as it turned out, I met a really nice girl in the animal science department, And
Amazing how college does that. Going back for graduate school. Yeah.
yeah. So stuck around and had a great opportunity to do a PhD with the Ag Research Service with Mike Koget's group, and yeah, it's just kind of funny how things life's what happens while you make plans, right?
Right.
So
That's good. Life's what happens when you make plans. That's very true. That is very true. And then what was your research area for your PhD?
for my PhD, I looked at toll-like receptors and how they stimulate oxidative bursts in the avian header field. It's a white blood cell. And we kind of looked at the signaling pathways involved and helped some other projects, looking at antibiotic alternatives as well, like the beta glucan and that type of thing. And for the masters, looked at several different things. Uh, Dr. El Helwani's lab had some turkey gamma interferon that we gave the birds to reduce salmonella, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I looked at the relationship of heat stress and salmonella infection, which we didn't really see anything interesting as these things go. And kind of tried some. We even looked at fire ants. We even had a
They
weird.
get after people. They have their toxin is pretty crazy stuff, I think.
Yeah, that formic acid. Well, there's a study that failed, and the fire ants got into the chicken feed, so they thought that maybe the formic acid had something to do with the salmonella challenge. So I spent a week or two of my master's digging up fire ant mounds and
try not to get bit yourself.
Yeah.
That's good graduate student work. Dig up fire ant mounds.
Well, that's what makes it fun. You look at these observations and test them, and kind of go from there. So
right. Okay. So in terms of like kind of your extension work in terms of depopulation and sort of the things that we've had to do as an industry over the past year and a half dealing with high path avian influenza, kind of now the whole world is dealing with this. What are some key takeaways that you think are critical in terms of trying to manage those situations in our industry?
As far as if there's actual disease break on farm, well, if it already happened, it's a disaster. And we train, and the training is actually kind of fun, working with the equipment and that type of thing. But the actual event's very very difficult. Emotionally, it's heart wrenching. In some instances, the birds, may or may not be expressing symptoms, but they're still infected. But some of these broiler farms are pretty big. I mean, you might go from 6 to 8 houses to as many as 28 or 30, and it's a mess. The big, I guess the take-home message is try to prevent it through good biosecurity, right? And you almost have to be.
That's the preferred thing.
Yeah. You almost have to be a bit paranoid, and what they say, never take microbiology; it'll ruin your life, right?
True.
But yeah, I mean, just the simple things. I mean, it's scary. You can reduce your risk, but darkling beetles, I think they fly a quarter to half of a mile.
They carry things a long way.
Yeah, how do you protect against them? How do you, the people in Iowa were saying, I guess during the 14-15 break, some of them thought it was transferred on dust particles, said they had straight line winds, and, how do you filter the air? And, layer operations that have lagoons, they'll flush their manure pits with lagoon water.
Right.
And, you have waterfowl on them, so you're circulating virus through your house. It's
a lot of virus.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. I don't, and there was a primary breeder, I guess last year that broke, and they their biosecurity is insane.
Right. They have the best biosecurity, out of any segment of our industry. So
yeah, I mean they take some, like one guy say he took 20 showers in one day, so and they broke. So I don't know I think you can reduce risk, but I don't think you'll ever get to zero, no matter
Right.
how careful you are. But yeah, just the logistics are involved to, dispose of that many chickens and the manure and the amount of people that are needed. It's quite an ordeal. So
It is. And I think that, as you were saying, it is an extremely emotional process. No part of anyone involved, takes any of this lightly. And I think our industry kind of gets this, it's not a bad rap, but it's like we take it all so lightly, but it's not done lightly. It at any standpoint, and it is there as a tool to try to stop the spread of the virus. It's not just, and I think that, through this outbreak, we've seen a lot more backyard flocks involved, and we've had, the federal government come in and have to, depopulate. So I feel like more people have encountered, the seriousness of when we have these disease outbreaks and just how quickly you have to act. So maybe the popular opinion will start to shift. So
yeah, well, I think the farmers probably impacted the most. I mean, people that farm, I think, like to see things grow and thrive. Kind of
it's the last
manicuring
thing
their.
they want to do is have to depopulate their whole
Yeah,
flock. Yeah,
yeah. I think that's the most traumatic, to have alphabet soup show up. People in
right.
white suits show up on your farm.
That is true.
That's been your family. But the way I justify the depopulation is, a lot of those diseases are probably going to kill the birds before you're able to even depopulate, unfortunately. And the way I look at it is if I can contain that fire, so to speak, then maybe I prevent other animals from getting sick. And it kind of escalates a bit when you start thinking about the effect on wildlife, and if it were to turn zoonotic as well. I mean, that's the reason why we spend so much effort on this, because there's always concern that it could mutate into something
Right.
more dangerous. So
That is true. We need to, and knock on wood, it's been quiet lately. So let's keep that let's keep that moving in that direction. So I think we'll shift from that. You mentioned some of your current research is probably a big question a lot of people have is, how do some of these alternative products that we use in the absence of antibiotics, how do they actually work? What are they doing with the immune system? So if you've looked at any of those, which I think you have, what have you learned in terms of what action they're actually providing?
yeah, well, I think the toughest thing about studying antibiotic alternatives is that they are an alternative to antibiotics, and you're not going to see the same effect. If I have an animal that's sick with a bacteria and I pair it with the right, antibiotic, overnight that animal is going to get better. And I think antibiotic alternatives are a lot more, you know, um, minor of a change or adjustment, if you will. And that makes it really hard to measure in the laboratory when you're looking at small changes like that. And you have to have very big sample sizes, and of course that gets really costly. And if you start to look at things like immune response or salmonella and that type of thing, and you have a lot of variability between the animals, these aren't mice that are inbred. These chickens are relatively outbred, so it's really, really, really difficult to see these differences sometimes. I think that they're happening, but antibiotic alternatives, it's important to realize that we're talking about a pretty wide range of
Right.
things.
A
So
lot of things in that category.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you
So
can kind of group some of them together, but it's a whole, mix of things.
oh yeah, well that includes vaccines,
Right.
right? Which vaccines are probably your best antibiotic alternative, I would say. And of course, I think everybody has a pretty good understanding of how those work. But the others would be beneficial bacteria like probiotics. And there's so much that's happening at the gut level, between the immune system, the nervous system, the digestive tract. I mean, there's some people that will suggest that maybe your personality quirks could be based on the
True, your gut
microflora
bacteria.
in your gut.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Gut
and I
brain
don't,
connection.
yeah, and while I don't know if it affects whether you become a criminal or not, I think there's some pretty good examples, like Toxoplasma gondii, how mice actually become attracted to cat urine, so they'll be, you know, um, consumed and then passed on that pathogen. Of course, rabies, that's another good example. So, and I think, I'm blanking out. I think it's like 95% of the serotonin that's um, produced by your body is produced in the gut, actually. And they've actually done studies with mice where mice that are in a notobotic or germ-free environment have only about 60% the serotonin levels that
Much
those.
lower
But
serotonin.
yeah. So it can influence behavior. The thought is that maybe these good bacteria compatibly exclude the bad ones. Um, People forget that these bacteria are at war with each other. They're competing for nutrients, for attachment sites, and all this. So they're actually can produce things to try to discourage the other ones. And we can also encourage growth of good bacteria with things like prebiotics. That would be another one. A lot of work being done with yeast
Yeast
fermentation
extracts,
products.
yes.
Yep. So, beta glucans are known to be immunomodulatory, so they can stimulate immune functions. So that would be a possibility. Quite a bit of work done with different names. I always call them botanicals or plant
Right.
extracts.
Phytobiotics, or yes, they all have fancy names. Yes.
Yeah. So, and some of them smell really good. Oregano oil,
Right.
thyme. I mean, I always wondered if the chicken tasted any different.
Right. They'll come pre-marinated when you
Yeah,
use
that's
those.
right. That's right. But you always have to be careful because you know when you when you stimulate immune function, you're burning calories, right?
Right.
So you really don't want to stimulate immune function unnecessarily, was needed for sure, but just to give a product,
To give
to
a
have that immune,
product,
yeah,
not necessary.
a regular state, maybe that's not best. And sometimes, are we just measuring inflammation, or we, you could feed an animal anything and cause inflammation. Was that a good thing? Are you
Right.
are you
Right.
promoting the right immune response in that case? So I guess I think we have to be kind of careful, when we look at those types of things. And there's other strategies too that I guess could fit, like gut acidifiers and that kind of thing, trying to acidify the crop and the gut. Um, there's some others I'm blanking out on, bacteriocins, bacteriophages, but yeah, but the phages are a little
They're
tricky, right?
finicky. Yeah. Can't be given easily. Nothing is like, I feel like there's no like, oh yes, this one product is like the best, and then it works across the board. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like what may work in one complex and one person's operation will not work in another person's operation. They're very, sort of almost, strain a bird. You see just a lot of differences. So
Well, there's no silver bullet. These are things to help, with production practices, and usually, this is anecdotal, but the farms that are the worst. Um, well, I'm trying to think of a nice way to put it. The ones that they're poorly managed. Usually,
oh
they have
yes,
like alternatives work better at.
right.
I found. Whereas the ones that you drive up and there's a flagpole and a flower bed and yard decorations, a lot of times you don't see a difference.
No, true. Very true. The house environment plays a big role.
Yeah, and it's miserable down here in Texas. I'm sure the birds are.
Oh, you guys are having crazy heat right now. I can't even imagine.
It's the summers are tough in Texas, but the the other 2 months of the year are pretty nice. So.
True. So in terms of, you kind of mentioned some of this in terms of like acidifiers. I know some of your work in the past has been done in terms of like pre-harvest food safety. So in terms of like these, our microbes of concern, Salmonella and Campylobacter, when we head to processing, any of your work done in that in terms of, yes, these interventions actually do things, because, there's a lot of talk in terms of, FSIS standards reducing, things being labeled in products. The term adulterant is being discussed and thrown out by FSIS. So as an industry, we're constantly bringing down and getting down to a certain level. So they're always looking for extra, any additional tools. So in terms of from a pre-harvest standpoint, what are some key sort of control points that you see working in the industry?
Yeah, well, I think good biosecurity, and of course that starts with the primary breeder. As we mentioned before, they really do a good job of keeping these pathogens out to begin with. But when you get to the integrator, we should, depending on how much these guys and gals are scrambling to put out fires every day, right? So where do you put your resources, your effort into? But the feed stuff that come in, they could be contaminated. Insect control, rodent control, tire washes, all those things are important. But I think the public doesn't always realize that these pathogens, like the foodborne salmonellas and campylobacters, they're almost, I hate to say commensal organisms, but
that is a very appropriate term. They are definitely commensals.
Yeah, I mean they don't really bother the bird,
Not one bit.
It's there, it's in the environment, and to control something like that's really difficult. And then they're in these transport coops, which can be difficult to clean. And then they go to the processing plant where the same equipment, same bird contaminates one piece of equipment and the next, and so on and so forth. And I think the hardest thing's the feather follicles. When you remove those feathers, you're also probably rubbing in bacteria into those follicles, which if you're using a plant intervention, it's probably kind of tough
getting inside of those
to get into that protected area. So yeah, I mean, I think vaccination's probably the best intervention that we have for salmonella. But it needs improvement as well. Of course, vaccinating the hens and trying to improve maternal immunity. Novo vaccination's a big boon. As well at the hatchery. So
yeah, we haven't figured out how to give salmonella that way yet.
No.
We haven't figured that one out.
No. I'm sure we'll figure it out soon.
Hopefully we'll get there.
But yeah, I mean, I think maternal antibodies would probably be useful for the chick until their immune system is able to boot up, so to speak. And we forget these broilers are just babies. They don't hit puberty 18, 20 weeks of age, and
everything's super immature, and we expect it to get moving really quickly. And
yep.
It's not made that way.
No, it's kind of hard for a vaccine to work in that short amount of time when they're going to market in 4 to 9 weeks of age. So it's a real challenge, and I don't fault anyone. And I think the consumer should realize we can reduce the risk, and everybody's working really hard to do that. But I don't think you'll ever get down to zero.
No. Yes, we're dealing with like you said, it's in the chicken, and it's not doing anything to the chicken or the turkey. There are turkeys in there, duck, like really any poultry, game birds too. But we have a lot of interventions that we do. We're not just, as you said, we're not just trying to use plant chemistries. Like most companies are doing a lot of things. And I think we have, the industry's done a great job reducing it to the points that we have. And the consumer has to start, we really, there's so many people still I cross paths with that have no clue how farming works, either row crops or poultry or bee, like they have no clue how agriculture contributes to their lives. And, they have no clue about how to handle their food safely. Like there is zero education on that for most people, or, they watch a video off of social media and, just follow whatever. And so I think that, if we want to get strides in terms of reducing human illness, we have to start educating people a lot more. I don't know if it's that, like probably our generation, there was home ec in school all the time. And there was a person that taught you how to cook or, how to do things safely. Like if we drop, I have a feeling like we've dropped some of that. And I know, ag education is not the case in most, especially like urban environments. There's not, there's just not a background on that. So yeah, I think the industry's taking a lot of steps, and now we gotta figure out the other piece, because it's two parts to it.
I think everyone has this Norman Rockwell, ideal of what agriculture should be like, and I don't think they understand that we'd probably starve if we went back to that way. Farming, that's probably when 80% of the population farmed too, and I don't think they would want to do that. They
don't want to do that. It's hard work, and they don't realize the 2% that puts food on their table, the level of work that they do.
Oh yeah. It's amazing how I went to see some family in Florida that I hadn't seen in a number of years, and it was so good to catch up. But they basically just asked me chicken questions for 2 days.
Do they have backyard chickens, or
no?
They're just
brown eggs or white eggs.
Funny. That's
organic
so funny.
Or conventional, and pastured or not.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, it is. People ask you the crazy questions.
Yep.
So in terms of like, the avian immune system, and in terms of that kind of that, immature chick in the US, we put them out on built up litter, good. There's probably some good there. There's probably some bad there. We expose them to a lot of, viruses that are left in the house, but there's potentially beneficial bacteria there. We know what the kind of Coxy reaction is. So in terms of that, immune system and trying to strengthen that, any of your past research or current research, products that help? Probiotics given in the hatchery, are those great? Probiotics given in ovo, what can we do? Because I do think that, NAE is here to stay. The reduction of antibiotics is just going to either stay at its current level or even continue. So what can we do to improve? I feel like early is where we can make some impact. So any of your past work in terms of, sort of modulating the immune response there?
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. We're taking, day of hatch chicks and put them on
really dirty place. Yep.
They have a immature immune system that's not fully functional at this point. If it wasn't for maternal antibodies, they would probably be.
They wouldn't make it very long.
They'd be in a lot more trouble. I think the biggest bang for your buck is probably good husbandry and management. Ahead of time. Litter pasteurization, windrowing your litters is good. And it's funny, there's new house versus old house syndrome, right?
Yes.
So you can actually be too clean.
Yeah. I dealt with a pullet flock just the other week. Definite new house syndrome. Like, it was bad.
Yeah. So I don't know, cleaning your water lines, making sure you have good water, that the animals aren't stressed. I think that's probably the biggest bang for your buck, because the animal is healthy and feels good. They're going to eat and drink and gain weight, and the immune system's not going to be depressed. When an animal starts to go into survival mode, a lot of things like immune function kind of go out the window. I guess they're kind of
They sacrifice that just for maintenance.
yeah. So I think just husbandry and management are probably going to be the biggest bang for your buck, including biosecurity. But yeah, I think a lot of these products work, but again, you're not going to see the difference that you're going to see if you were to give an antibiotic or maybe in a vaccine if you had the time. I think they're pretty mild, and these are mostly feed additives or waterline additives. They're not FDA approved drugs, and the companies have to be very careful about making such claims, of course,
Of course, yeah.
So I think these are more modifiers. I think they can kind of maybe stimulate immunity a little bit, such as the beta glucans and the feed, or maybe you could try to reduce the pH in the crop. But the problem with that is the hindgut kind of neutralizes any acid pretty quickly, so we don't really see that carried over to the hindgut where the salmonella and the campylobacter likes to reside. So, probiotics definitely having a good, microflora is going to keep that bird healthy and hopefully competitive exclude some of the bad ones. But when do you give them? Do you give
Right.
them continuously? Do you give it intermittently? Some people suggest you just give it at feed changes.
Yeah.
If you gave an animal antibiotics, maybe afterwards,
Right.
probiotics would be a great time to give that, or if maybe there's some kind of flushing or something along those lines, maybe that would be a way to kind of restore things back to baseline. Some of these plant extracts, they do cause inflammation in the gut, and inflammation in the absence of disease is a bad thing.
Right.
But if there was a disease issue, maybe that kind of helps things along a little bit. It's kind of and I think that's the thing that's so hard about these alternatives is to actually measure the differences is difficult. And maybe the disease passes through, and now you're chasing the next fire. And field trials are so tough to do because
so many variables. There's just too many variables when you get out to a whole broiler house.
Yeah, and our BL2 facilities, everything's perfect, but everything's perfect, so it's not
right.
real world
not
either,
real.
right? So
yeah. there's no happy medium of like a larger pen trial. There's not a great way. And I do think like what you're like, it may be that like you're saying it helps recruit inflammatory cells, but if you're not fighting something, then that recruitment is actually drawing, calories and nutrition that you want put into muscle, not in towards an inflammatory reaction. So, I think that there may be time points, like you're saying, feed changes, or if you do have a cocci challenge, like if some of those products impact, cocci replication or something like that, that then is taking away feed conversion. Then if you use those products, you might get a point or two back. So I think it is like they're very small, impacts, but we don't want the negatives. We don't want the
that's
bad
right.
things.
Well, there's also the importance of nutrition too. We forget about how important nutrition is for the immune response. I know vitamin D is an important one. Arginine, those types of things, as they make these different proteins.
Oh, and especially when the industry is like it is right now, when everybody's losing money, they're going to cut costs wherever they can, and nutrition's going,
Yeah, well, that's a tough thing. You bring up a good point. Least cost feed formulation. In theory, it should be great, but what other weird things are you doing to the gut of that bird if you're changing that feed stuff? And there's some other things. There ain't nutritional factors like flaxseed.
absolutely. Yes.
We did a study looking at a company had some problems with their egg quality, and what it was, the linetine in the flaxseed was affecting protein metabolism as an antagonist to B6. So yeah, we had a neat little undergrad research project, and
That's pretty cool.
yeah, kind of pieced it together. But yeah, there are a lot of nutritional factors in the diets, which I'm probably not very.
And so the flaxseed was added as an omega source for the eggs.
Yeah, yeah, it was a designer egg, if you will, high omega 3s, and these expensive eggs they're cracking open, and the yolk would just deflate. So,
Oh wow!
yeah,
Definite impact on egg quality. Don't want
oh
that.
yeah, yeah.
No matter the extra nutrition. Excellent.
It's time for our famous 3. JBI helps poultry producers fight against harmful pathogens with the foaming power of D7 disinfectant. JBI prevents costly outbreaks and assures eco-friendly biosecurity on-farm and in transport. Safe and effective against AI, E. coli, salmonella, cocci, dermatitis, and other illness-causing pathogens, D7 is non-toxic, providing a safer environment for you and your employees, low corrosive to equipment, and breaks down biofilms. Learn more at jbidistributors.com. Your partner in improving animal performance, Berg & Schmidt. They believe the following additives are necessary in the poultry dietary: functional lipids for an efficient dietary energy management, phospholipids for emulsification, achieving a better nutrient intake, MCTs to provide energy and modulate the microflora within the intestines, and enzymes for elevated use of fibrous materials and byproducts.
Well, in terms of, I think we've covered some great topics. Maybe we'll kind of do a little wrap up. In terms of maybe advice to people who might be interested in, getting into extension. We have a lot of probably students that listen into the podcast. What advice do you give students interested in poultry science?
Okay, well, as far as the extension service is concerned, I think it's helpful to enjoy people and enjoy those relationships.
It's a lot of talking.
Yeah, a lot of windshield time, but I think humility is important. I don't think you should go up and just tell people how smart you are. I think it's important.
Excellent point.
Yeah, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so I listen quite a bit and take a lot of notes. And every time I go out in the field, I learn something from our industry stakeholders. I mean, they're the ones that are doing it for a living. I just kind of dabble in it, right? So I think perspective's important, and I think you need to embrace the land grant mission and believe in that. I mean, it was a really amazing thing that our forefathers did for this country, and I think if you live that, I think you'll be very, very successful with extension. As far as why to go to poultry science, well, why not? I mean, there are a lot of jobs. Our kids get 4 to 5 different job offers. The pay is really good. I understand some of our kids are starting out at 60, 65.
Yeah, I've heard 70 for poultry science grads coming out. Yeah.
Man. Yeah, I think when I worked for Tyson's, I think I was making 25, 26.
We're gonna age ourselves, Morgan.
Yeah, it's been a few years.
Yeah, these kids don't realize how great their salaries are.
Oh yeah. So I think another advantage about the poultry industry is and academia as well, is it's a pretty small group of people. I mean, even though it's such a large industry,
it seems like it's a large industry, but like you start talking to somebody, oh, I know so and so, and it's very small and very connected.
Yeah, you're only 1 or 2 people removed from knowing just about everyone, I think. So I think that's what makes it fun. It's kind of almost a family kind of atmosphere to me.
It is very much.
Yeah, and I don't mind working hard, but if I'm at work most of my life, most of my waking hours, I want to enjoy what I do, and I want to enjoy the people that I work with, and I'll say the poultry industry has been a really good group of people. They're going to get up early and they're going to work a lot long hours and difficult circumstances, but they they all have a good sense of humor and and are fun to work with, and that makes it enjoyable. I think you have to have a good sense of humor to work in agriculture. So
True. True. So you never know what the next day is going to bring.
that's exactly right.
That
So
is true. Well, I think that's a good note to end on our poultry industry family. I think that once you establish a career, I think you learn that very quickly that a lot of people are interconnected, and the network is very small. So, well, Morgan, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with us today, and enjoy the rest of your week.
yes, ma'am. You too. Thank you for the opportunity, and I enjoyed visiting with you.